Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. Merci d'être des nôtres.
Thank you for being here.
Before we get into things, I have some news to share regarding the Canada-US border. Over the past few days, I've spoken to President Trump about what we can do to slow the spread of COVID-19. Deputy Prime Minister Freeland has been in touch with Vice President Pence and Secretary Pompeo. I just spoke to President Trump again this morning, and we have agreed that both Canada and the United States will temporarily restrict all non-essential travel across the Canada-US border. Je viens de parler au président Trump et nous avons
I just spoke with President Trump, and we confirmed that Canada and the U.S. will temporarily forbid any non-essential crossing at the border.
Travelers will no longer be permitted to cross the border for recreation and tourism. In both our countries, we're encouraging people to stay home. We're telling our citizens not to visit their neighbors if they don't absolutely have to. Well, this collaborative and reciprocal measure is an extension of that prudent approach. I want to be clear, though, that essential travel will continue. Our governments recognize that it is critical that we preserve supply chains between both countries. These supply chains ensure that food, fuel, and life-saving medicines reach people on both sides of the border. Supply chains, including trucking, will not be affected by this new measure. Canadians and Americans cross the border every day to do essential work or for other urgent reasons. That will not be impacted. Ces jours-ci,
these days, all Canadians feel the consequences of COVID-19. To assure your security and safety, we ask for everyone to work from home, to avoid public areas, to buy only what you need in the grocery store and at the grocery store, and be gentle and empathic, and have compassion for those around you. We all need to do our part to protect our health and that of our close ones.
The spread of COVID-19 is forcing us all to change our ways, and for many people, that's a huge adjustment. If you work in a restaurant, drive a cab, organize events, or freelance to pay your bills, working from home is not so simple. Just like if you work in the oil and gas sector or the tourism and seafood industries, you're looking at the uncertainty in the global economy and probably wondering not only how long this is going to last, but how long your savings are going to last. No matter who you are or what you do, this is a time where you should be focused on your health and that of your neighbors, not whether you're going to lose your job. Not whether you're going to run out of money for things like groceries and medication. Last week, we announced a whole range of measures to protect jobs, small businesses, and the economy, from waiving the waiting period for employment insurance sickness benefits to kick in, to increasing support for employers and businesses. We introduced special measures under the work sharing program to help employers who fall on hard times during COVID-19. And if your business faces a cash crunch, we will help you bridge to better times. We're working with our financial crown corporations through the Business Credit Availability Program to protect jobs and businesses with $10 billion in credit. Mais comme on l'a dit la semaine dernière,
but as we said last week, this is only the first step. When we announced those measures, we said we would do more. And this is what brings me here this morning.
In these extraordinary times, our government is taking extraordinary measures. The measures we're announcing today will provide up to $27 billion in direct support to Canadian workers and businesses, plus $55 billion to meet liquidity needs of Canadian businesses and households through tax deferrals to help stabilize the economy. Combined, this $82 billion in support represents more than 3% of Canada's GDP. Let's start with people who don't qualify for employment insurance and don't have access to paid sick leave. Our government will introduce the Emergency Care Benefit, which will provide money every 2 weeks to workers who have to stay home. People will receive this benefit for 14 weeks for an amount comparable to what would be paid through EI. This applies to people who fall ill, people who've been placed in quarantine or have to self-isolate, It also applies to those who have to take care of a family member with COVID-19, but, as I said, fail to qualify for EI. If you lose your job and you do not qualify for EI, we will be introducing a COVID-19 emergency support benefit to help you. This will apply also to people who are self-employed and have to close shop because of the virus. Je vais commencer par ce qu'on va faire pour les gens qui ne sont pas admissibles à l'assurance emploi. Notre gouvernement va instaurer l'allocation de soins d'urgence qui donnera de l'argent aux travailleurs qui doivent rester chez eux à cause de la COVID-19
COVID-19 every 2 weeks.
Les gens recevront cette
People will
prestation
get
pour 14
these
semaines,
monies
le
for
montant
14
comparable
weeks
à celui
and
de
a
l'assurance
comparable
emploi.
amount to
Cette
that of
mesure
EI.
vise ceux qui tombent
This
malades,
measure is
ceux qui
aiming
sont
at those who are
placés en
falling
quarantaine
ill,
et ceux qui
those who are
doivent
put in
s'isoler
quarantine, and those who
volontairement.
need to be
Elle s'applique aussi
self-isolating.
aux
It
gens
also
qui doivent
applies to
s'occuper d'un
those who
membre de leur
need to
famille
take care of
ayant la
a family
COVID-19,
member who
mais,
has
comme je l'ai dit,
COVID-19, but as I
ne sont
said,
pas admissibles
but are
à
not
l'assurance emploi.
eligible to EI.
Si vous perdez votre emploi
If you
et
lose
vous
your
n'êtes
job
pas admissible à
and you're
l'assurance
not
emploi, on va
eligible
mettre
to
en place
EI, we will put in
l'allocation de
place
soutien
an
d'urgence.
emergency support allocation to
Cette
help you.
mesure s'appliquera
This
aussi aux
measure will
travailleurs
apply also
autonomes qui
to
doivent arrêter leurs activités
independent
à
workers
cause
who
du
need to
virus.
stop their activities due to
As
this
part of
virus.
this economic plan, our government will take additional steps to protect jobs. We will provide employers of small businesses with a temporary wage subsidy equal to 10% of salary paid to employees for a period of 3 months. This will encourage employers to keep staff on the payroll during these uncertain times. Pour protéger les emplois,
To protect
notre
jobs,
gouvernement offrira aux
our
employeurs
government
des petites
will offer
entreprises
employers of
une
small
subvention
businesses
salariale temporaire
salary
équivalente à
help,
10%
a
du
temporary
salaire
salary
offert
help
à leurs employés.
that equals 10% of their employees' salaries for 3 months. This is a measure that will help employers to keep their employees during these times of
We're in
uncertainty.
the middle of tax season, and I know a lot of people are wondering what COVID-19 means for their personal finances. For those who've filed their taxes and find out that they owe money, they will have until August 2020 to pay. Si vous faites votre déclaration d'impôt
If you make
et
your
vous apprenez
tax
que vous
declaration
devez
and
de
find
l'argent,
out that you
vous
owe
aurez
money,
jusqu'en août
you have till
2020
August
pour payer.
2020 to pay.
On prévoit aussi une aide
We
plus
also
ciblée
plan
au cours
for
des
a more
prochains mois
targeted
pour différents groupes de
help
personnes qui sont
in the next few
particulièrement
months
touchées
for
par le
different
virus
groups of people who are particularly
ou qui
touched
sont
by
dans
this
une
virus
situation
or are
vulnérable.
in a vulnerable situation.
Ça m'amène à la
This brings
prochaine
me
mesure qu'on
to
annonce
the next
aujourd'hui,
measure we're announcing
qui est
today,
destinée aux
which is for
parents. Families
parents.
with young kids are going to find the coming months especially difficult with school closures and additional childcare responsibilities. Parents already know how much the Canada Child Benefit helps with the costs of raising kids. To take some of that pressure off, our government will temporarily boost the CCB in the coming months. Pour aider les parents à traverser cette période
To help
difficile,
parents face
notre
these difficult
gouvernement
times, our
bonifiera
government will
temporairement l'allocation
temporarily
canadienne pour
bonify
enfants
the Canadian
au cours des
allocation for
prochains mois.
children in the next few
With this
months.
plan, we're also going to do more for lower-income people. In May, our government will supplement the GST credit, a tax-free payment sent to low-income Canadians every few months to offset the consumer tax that they pay. Every adult who qualifies will receive up to $300 with $150 for every child. Pour aider les gens dont le revenu est faible
To
ou
help
modeste,
those who
notre
have
gouvernement
a small or
augmentera le
modest
crédit pour la
revenues,
taxe
our
sur les
government will
produits et
increase the
En mai,
help for
les adultes qui sont
GST.
admissibles recevront jusqu'à
In May,
$300
adults who are
et jusqu'à
eligible will get up to
$150 par enfant.
$300 and up to $150
While all
per child.
Canadians are feeling the impacts of COVID-19, some groups are particularly vulnerable. For people who are still paying off their student loans, including young people and those who are starting a family, our government will put in place a 6-month interest-free moratorium on their Canada student loans. For people experiencing homelessness, we are doubling the Reaching Home program, which provides funding to communities to help them address their local needs. For anyone fleeing domestic or gender-based violence, we will boost funding for shelters that provide sanctuary when self-isolating at home is simply not an option. And to support immediate needs in First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Nation communities, we are setting up a distinctions-based Indigenous Community Support Fund. This list is by no means exhaustive, but these are some of the things our government is doing to make sure that no matter where you live, what you do, or who you are, you will get the support you need during this time. In Canada, public health should never hinge on financial considerations. Aujourd'hui, on annonce un plan
Today we're
pour
announcing
aider les
a
gens.
plan to help
On se
people.
concentre sur les
We're
besoins les plus pressants,
focusing on the
mais comme
most
je le dis
pressing
depuis le
needs, but
début,
as I said
notre
since the
réponse
beginning,
évoluera
our
au fur et à
response
mesure
will
que la
evolve
situation
as the
évolue.
situation evolves.
Peu importe ce que l'avenir nous
Whatever
réserve,
what the
les
future
Canadiens
has for us,
peuvent compter sur nous.
Canadians can count on
Notre
us.
travail, c'est de vous
Our
aider.
job is to
C'est de vous
support
donner
you,
un coup de pouce
is
lorsque
to
vous en
give
avez
you
le plus
this
besoin.
help
Et
where
c'est ce
you
qu'on
need it
fait
the
avec
most.
les mesures
And that's
qu'on a
what we're
annoncées
doing with the
jusqu'à
measures
date.
we're announcing
Et
up
c'est
to
ce qu'on va
today,
continuer
and that's
à
what
faire.
we will continue to do.
Now, I want to turn to additional measures for businesses as part of this economic plan. To help businesses navigate these uncertain economic times, Export Development Canada will provide support to Canadian companies affected by the global situation. For farmers and our primary food producers, we will boost Farm Credit Canada. And we know some sectors of our economy are more vulnerable to COVID-19 than others. That's why in the coming days, we'll be looking at ways in which we can support them all, including through instruments like the Canada account. L'annonce d'aujourd'hui donne suite aux mesures
Today's
que nous
announcement
avons
is a
déjà prises
follow-up
pour
to
protéger
the
les
measures we already
Canadiens,
taken
leur
to
santé
protect
et
Canadians,
notre
their
économie.
health, and our
Le
economy.
ministre Morneau a
Minister
également
Morneau
obtenu auprès des banques
also
canadiennes
got
un
from
engagement à
Canadian banks a
apporter un soutien
commitment
aux
to
entreprises et aux
support
gens
businesses
touchés par la
and those
COVID-19.
touched by
Je
COVID-19.
sais qu'il maintient
I
un
know that
contact
he maintains
régulier
a
dans ce dossier,
regular
ainsi
contact
qu'avec
on
les
this
dirigeants
file and
d'entreprises,
with
les
the business
représentants
leaders,
syndicaux,
union
ses homologues
representatives,
internationaux.
and international
Our
counterparts.
team is paying close attention to the economic impacts of decisions we make across the board to slow the spread of this virus. On Monday, I announced that Canada was closing its air borders to people who are not Canadian citizens or permanent residents, with some exceptions. We also announced a range of other measures on travel. But travel restrictions will not apply to commerce or trade. We are working continuously to ensure the supply of important goods to Canada. Today, we've announced $27 billion in direct support to Canadian workers and businesses, plus $55 billion to meet liquidity needs of Canadian businesses and households to help stabilize the economy through tax deferrals. Economic measures will ensure that our economy rebounds after this. And while we are taking a significant step today to help families get through these challenging times, our government is prepared to do more. But whether we're talking about economic, travel, or health measures, collaboration and coordination remains essential. Our team is in constant communication with our colleagues in the provinces and territories, as well as Indigenous leaders and communities, to ensure that we have a coordinated, Canada-wide approach so we face this and recover from this together. We're also working with our international counterparts. Over the last number of days, I've spoken with leaders from around the world, including with fellow G7 leaders. Working together is how we'll get through this, as families, as a community, as a country. Like many of you, over the past few days, I've seen stories of people doing just that, of people donating money to food banks to help those in need, of friends setting up online groups to chat, of retired nurses and doctors stepping up to help, of young people giving a hand to elderly neighbors by dropping off some extra groceries at their door. I have to tell you, it gives me a lot of hope. I want to close by recognizing everyone on the front lines who's doing an incredible job of keeping Canadians safe and healthy. Grocers keeping their shelves full and our families fed. Postal workers helping us stay home. Pharmacists filling our prescriptions. Healthcare professionals caring for our most vulnerable, public health officials and first responders looking out for our safety. I know it's a hard time, but that's exactly why we need to keep supporting each other. Our government is here for you, and your fellow Canadians are here for you too. Merci. Thank you, everyone. Just before we get to questions, I'm supposed to model healthy behavior. I'm going to go grab my coat, and I'll be right back.
Okay, so smart idea for the Prime Minister to go get his coat. I'm not sure what the temperature is. Glenn McGregor, you're there, but here he comes. That's quick. The coat, obviously, right there in the front door. Prime Minister coming back again, an $82 billion announcement.
But a little brisk.
A little cold. Hello, Mr. Trudeau. It's Annie Bergeron-Oliver from CTV National News. I'm just wondering, what assurances do you have from President Trump that if this pandemic gets worse, he will not close the borders, crippling trade and necessary shipments in Canada? And also, how long do you expect this temporary closure to last? Will it be weeks? Are you planning for months?
We talked about exactly that this morning, President Trump and I, to ensure that indeed our economies and our people that are so interconnected in so many different ways will be able to ensure the smooth flow of goods and essential materials and medication across the border. That is something that we remain committed to. We will work in close collaboration on an ongoing basis to make sure that that continues. And these measures will last in place as long as we feel that they need to last. We will, again, closely coordinate on that as well.
Monsieur Trudeau, sur la frontière avec les États-Unis,
Mr. Trudeau, with the American border, how do we make sure concretely that those who still can cross the border do not come and infect people here and start, contamination hubs? That we still bring the essential merchandise and goods, and how long will we be stuck in that situation? We're working very intensively with the Americans to put in place precise rules that will keep Canadians and Americans safe. We understand up to what point it's important for this border to stay open as much as possible. We talk about $2 billion of merchandise per day that are crossing this border. It's essential. It's critical not only for the health of our economy, but the health of our citizens that this continues. And we will look at how to make sure that these measures protect Canadians while enabling those goods and produce to come in. Now, in terms of the length of this measure, we will look at it as long as it's necessary while coordinating between our two countries on the necessary measures.
CBC News. Prime Minister, with all these economic measures being announced, is it inevitable that we're heading into a recession?
I think right now we are focused on making sure that people who are not getting income or revenue because of this COVID-19 challenge have the money to be able to pay for groceries, to pay their rent, to support their families through this difficult time. We recognize that many businesses are closed, many workplaces have significant slowdowns, if not stoppages, and that is going to have an economic impact. But we also know that the fundamentals of the Canadian economy are strong. And in a number of weeks or a number of months or however long it takes, once we get rolling again, the capacity of the federal government to invest in the economy, to support businesses and individuals will ensure that we bounce back strongly. We have the fiscal room to do this because of prudent decision-making over the past 5 years. We will be able to ensure that our economy gets back up to speed very quickly.
Guillaume Saint-Pierre, Journal de Montréal. Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Vous annoncez aujourd'hui
You're announcing today billions of dollars for Canadians, but when it will be, well, it's easy to announce it and not as easy to do, but when will the Canadians who need it will see that color of that money? We talk about a few weeks before the help or support checks and those who are not qualified for or eligible to EI will start to arrive. There's some legislative measures. We are working with the other parties for all the collaboration in order to adopt those measures in the Commons and to have these monies continue. But, this happens right now, before the House reconvenes in order that we send these monies as quickly as possible when people will need it.
Maura Forrest, Politico. Prime Minister, yesterday you talked about the possibility of invoking the Emergencies Act. Today you're saying that the Canada-US border will be closed to non-essential travel. How close are you at this point to imposing restrictions across Canada? And specifically, are you considering limiting travel within Canada as well?
I have said time and time again that we are looking at all options. We're not taking any options off the table. Every day we've been announcing new measures that we've been able to move forward on, and we will continue to look at measures as they become necessary and the tools that exist to make those measures necessary. I will highlight, of course, that the Emergency Measures Act is a significant step, not one that we feel we need today, but not one that we are closing the door to in the future if necessary. Okay.
We're announcing today measures, and every day we will announce additional measures. Right now, we have all the necessary authority to announce measures that are recommended, and then we're putting them in place. We are not pushing anything aside in terms of possibilities and tools that we could use. I just remind you that the Emergency Act is an extremely important step. It's an extremely serious measure. And until the day that we really need it, we don't have any intention of using it. But we keep the door open that at one point it might be necessary. But from now to then, we're using all the tools we have to keep Canadians safe.
Marco Vigliati, iPolitics. Mr. Prime Minister, you rolled out or talked about a lot of economic and stimulus measures that you're planning to put in force. What kind of reassurances can you give to Canadians at this time that the government has the infrastructure in place and the people in place, considering the directive to work from home, that this money will roll out in a timely and efficient manner?
There are many families across this country who are looking at their sources of income dry up because of COVID-19. Many of them qualify for EI. Many workers qualify for EI, and we're making sure that with the elimination of the 1-week waiting period, that money will be able to flow significantly and quickly to them. Many families do not qualify for EI. Many workers do not qualify for EI, and therefore we're putting in place exceptional measures that will flow money to them every 2 weeks. Our capacity to do this is something that we have spent a lot of time over the past days ensuring, because we know that that could make the difference not just between one family facing tougher times or not, but it could make a difference on the health of all Canadians. People need to be able to self-isolate, need to be able to stay home, need to be able to care for their families when their ordinary sources of revenue dry up. That is why we're putting forward $27 million in direct supports to Canadians and businesses. That is why we are moving forward on freeing up $55 billion that will stay in the economy because of delayed tax payments to make sure that people can cover the things they need to in the coming days, along with all our extra measures for shelters, for Indigenous communities, through the Canada Child Benefit and others that will ensure that Canadians have the confidence that they will be okay through this difficult time, because we are all in this together and we are there for you.
On va maintenant passer aux journalistes
qui sont sur la ligne. We now move to those who are on the line. Moderators, please.
Thank you. Merci. The first question is from Lina Dib de la Presse canadienne. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Hello, Mr. Trudeau.
BC
is asking since last week that we close its border. You've seen the numbers in Washington State and BC that have exploded yesterday. Why haven't you made this an earlier recommendation or measure? And do you believe that you might have been too late, especially regarding BC? We took some big measures on Monday, and we took 2 days to coordinate with Americans to make sure that we do this in concert with one with another. Now, the Prime Minister of Freeland called yesterday Vice President Pence yesterday to start those discussions in the final stretch of it. And we were able to make this announcement today, and we know that there's a lot of that will help a lot of people across the country.
We recognize that we took some significant steps over the past few days. We closed the borders to overseas travel on Monday, and today, 2 days later, we announce that we are restricting non-essential travel between Canada and the United States. This is something that we've been coordinating with the United States on over the past days. Yesterday, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland reached out to Vice President Pence to really advance these negotiations, and we're able to announce it in a coordinated fashion on both sides of the border this morning. This is something that we need to move forward on to protect Canadians.
Parfait, on va passer à la prochaine question, modérateur.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Bill Curry from the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Hi, Prime Minister. We're seeing in the United States some lawmakers are discussing the possibility of sending direct checks to all Americans as a way of you sacrifice targeting those most in need, but the benefit is it gets there faster. And so you've gone with some existing programs that might involve people kind of dealing with the government and applying for these programs that could sacrifice speed. So can you talk about your thought process in going with this route as opposed to something like direct checks that might be simpler?
I know the finance minister is about to give a press conference in which he will answer many of these questions, but I can say that we are confident that getting these measures out, particularly around EI and folks who don't qualify for EI within the next few weeks to compensate for lost income is going to make a significant difference to people who had an income but have seen it dry up over these days because of COVID-19. Many people on pensions or benefits or supports of various types will of course still receive those supports. We really wanted to target those people who would lose their income specifically. We've also put on the table significant support for businesses and employers to be able to support their workers, to be able to support their fellow Canadians. These are the kinds of things that we're moving with both quickly and in a targeted fashion, because that's what Canadians expect.
Merci beaucoup. Modérateur, on va passer à la prochaine question.
Merci. Thank you. The next question is from Mélanie Marquis from La Presse. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Par rapport à la frontière,
Regarding the border, can you be more precise, starting when will this border be closed to non-essential travelers? And concretely, how will we control the forbiddance to access the territory? Could we hire other border patrol agents? And could we turn to the army? I'm just trying to understand also on the Roxham Road, people crossing this, will you put those people in isolation? First, we're working with the United States for these measures to be applied quickly. So we will have more announcements to make when we will do these things, but it will be a very short time. I can also underline that we have measures to ensure that non-essential travelers cannot cross the border. Resources from the Canadian Border Patrol Agency can more than suffice to meet that challenge, including the fact that many people can stay at home. They won't even try to go across the border if we tell them not to do it. Now, regarding Roxham Road, I can reassure you that every measures are in place to ensure that it's completely controlled and that everyone that goes across this will be in quarantine for 14 days.
Modérateur, dernière question.
Last question.
Merci. Thank you. The next question is from Heather Schofield from the Toronto Star. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Good morning, Prime Minister. In terms of working with the opposition and having to pass some of these steps through them, have you been in touch with the opposition leaders, and do you have their assurance that they will cooperate with you to move quickly?
Our House leaders have been working together very closely, both on the House side and on the Senate side. Minister Pablo Rodriguez and Senator Mark Gold have been engaged with all party leaders, both in the House and the Senate. There is broad collaboration. There is broad openness to moving these measures quickly that will help Canadians who need it. I am confident that this is a moment in which Canadians of all parties will pull together to ensure Canadians get the help they need.
Minister Rodriguez and Senator Mark Gold are currently working with their counterparts from other parties so that we can adopt these measures as quickly as possible. I can say that there's a big will by the opposition parties to help Canadians, and we trust that this will be adopted. Now, in terms of personally, I'm going well. Kids are doing great. I still don't have any symptoms. Sophie has a cold and she has a small headache and some little fever that comes and goes, and she's doing well, and she thanks you for your thoughts. Thank you, everyone.